Jesse Marsch took over at Elland Road at the end of February last year. We are 9 months and 31 Premier League games into his reign, but have Leeds made progress under the American? Before we look at what Marsch has actually done, it's probably sensible to ask, what exactly does progress look like for Leeds? I think it's quite easy here to fall into a couple of logic traps with this one. The first is that because Leeds were outside of the Premier League for such a long time, that merely being in it is enough. Obviously, for a club with such a storied history and a huge fan base, being in the Premier League feels like a simple prerequisite. But in terms of measuring their progress, I think a black or white in or out is probably overly simplistic. The other trap I don't want to fall down is measuring against Bielsa. And look, if you've watched the channel before, you'll know I got swept along with him too. But that moment has passed now, hasn't it? It's hard to imagine anyone being as beloved or as impactful as the Argentinian was at Leeds. And as spectacular as that 9th place finish was, now with the benefit of hindsight, it does feel like some kind of peak of an incredibly unique manager in incredibly unique times as well, with the empty stadiums, rather than any kind of norm to measure progress by. My take on what progress looks like at Leeds would revolve around steady growth on and off the pitch. We know in the background that the fan base and interest is a big tick, and in terms of the ownership model, we think an upgrade is coming and has been in the works for a fair while. The manager then needs to work towards elevating Leeds into being a viable entity that functions somewhere in between the relegation battle and those European places. At the same time, the manager needs to build and develop a team and squad that has value on the pitch and, equally importantly, on the balance sheet. Let me know if you agree with my definition of progress down there in the comments. For better or worse though, that's what I'm going to judge Jesse Marsch against. In terms of on pitch, he got the job done at the back end of last season. Leeds escaped in 17th spot on the final day, and in the 12 games that Marsch took charge of, Leeds were 13th in terms of total points scored, but actually 11th when you adjusted for points per game. Right now, Leeds are actually a couple of spots higher, but context is king here. They are 15th, but points per game is down across the board. The magic number for survival over the past 10 years is somewhere between 34 and 37.5 points across a Premier League season. At the moment, Leeds 0.94 points per game doesn't make that, but then neither does the entire bottom 7's current progress. It's not fair to judge entirely on results. A lot gets missed just looking at points going on the board. In the main, most of the underlying numbers have Leeds as an upper bottom half side. In terms of the extremities, and there are always some, Leeds are top for successful tackles per match and fouls per match, but 16th for goals conceded, 19th out of 20 for clean sheets. We were told when Jesse Marsch arrived about a high pressing, high intensity, narrow game with vertical passing angles being favoured for attacking. It does actually sound like the philosophy is being delivered to some degree. I'll let you tell me how well, although that defensive side continues to appear a big weakness. In terms of Leeds building a squad and Jesse Marsch building a squad with players who have high and increasing value on and off the pitch, you'd think that Victor Orta, the sporting director there, has the lion's share of influence in terms of who actually comes through the door. But then, of course, their development is then handed over and down to Jesse Marsch. Plenty of players have arrived with that Rafinha and Phillips income probably balancing the books actually quite nicely. Again, not Jesse Marsch's job. All the big signings were also aged 25 or under, and plenty seem to have been identified from the Red Bull system, which Marsch worked in previously. I'd say in terms of development, Tyler Adams has possibly been the pick, maybe Aronson and Roca next. It looks like Max Verber is going to help with some of those defensive issues, and we've yet to see the new expensive striker, Jorginho Rutter. Young Nonto up front looks a big bonus and a really exciting player too. Honestly, look, I'm fairly down the middle on this one. In terms of results and also taking into account the slow standard at the bottom of this year's Premier League, it is probably, through that prism, a bit below par this season. In terms of adding value on the pitch, there seems to be a philosophy and probably a ceiling higher than is being executed at the moment. Maybe they'll get there given more time and a couple more players. In terms of adding value on the balance sheet, I think there's probably a tick in the box for a young squad with a few who do look likely to trend up in value further down the line. But again, how much of that does Jesse Marsch take credit for, and how much is actually outside of his remit? I put up a poll on YouTube earlier asking people's opinions on this topic. And before heading in to record this, the majority of votes were saying that Marsch's work was kind of par for his budget, although there was a fair chunk in the not convinced category. So, in answer to the question at the centre of this video, are Leeds making progress under Jesse Marsch? The answer is, well, very fiddly in my opinion. I'd say in the short term, probably less than they would have hoped for thus far. The squad profile and recruitment does look like it's got a mid to long term upside, but I'm not sure we see Leeds finishing miles higher than they did last season, and that might not look great given Marsch will then have been in charge for more than an entire season and 2 transfer windows. If and when the ownership changes full on to the Americans, I'd say what Marsch is delivering right now might well not be fast enough progress at that point. Get your thoughts in then via the comments, and if you want to up the interaction, why not sign up over on Patreon? You get some exclusive content and the wonderful opportunity to debate with me and the other members over there face to face on our monthly round table. Now, I did take the liberty of having a good look at all of Lee's rivals in that relegation picture a week or 2 back. Why not click in this direction to see who I think might be making the drop down to the Championship?